Hello everyone, this is Namura. We are starting a little bit late due to some technical issues. I apologize for this. Anyway, we'll wait a little bit for people to join. And in the meantime, very shortly, I want to say what this video and Q&A is going to be about. I've been guided to do it based on the fact that many people have asked me questions, different questions about the spiritual world, about many subjects in the spiritual realm. And I am getting a lot of guidance from my spirit guides, from angels, from either intuitive thoughts and feelings or channelings. So I am happy to share this with you. Based on whether people will show interest in this video, I may do other ones. And for tonight, I have chosen two big themes to discuss about, light language and sacred geometry. They go very much together, and it seems like people are interested in these subjects. We may be touching on different other themes because everything is interrelated, as you know. And the answers tonight, as I said, are going to be a combination of information that I have previously received in different ways in my work, in my personal experience, and possibly channeled on the spot if the situation arises. Now, thank you very much for your questions. I do encourage you to post during this live stream. As much as it's just me talking here, I'm creating a space for everyone to connect into. And you are welcome to connect. You are welcome to pay attention to your own guidance, whether it comes as questions or answers. And you are welcome to comment, and I will try to follow up with the comments through the session and address them. Okay, so we are going to start by calling in some of the archangels to create a space of high vibration, a space that is enabling us to connect to this information that we are trying to retrieve, and also a space of complete safety. So we are going to call on Archangel Michael to create a high vibrational dome of protection over us and transmutation. We are going to call on Archangel Metatron to enable us easy access to the Akashic field of information. And we are going to also call on Archangel Sandalphon. And Archangel Sandalphon is helping with expression, is helping with grounding. It is important to keep grounded during these channelings and connections. We are also going to call on Lord Melchizedek and Mahatma. On the council of light of the Elohim, and on everybody else that can and will assist us at this time. Please, if you can, let me know if you hear me, if I speak loud enough, if you are able to see me properly. That would be helpful for me. Highness, welcome. So without further ado, we are going to start on the subject that we said we are going to discuss today, light language and sacred geometry, and they are very much interrelated in terms of, okay, thank you. In terms of light language, is very much about light, obviously. And this is about light in its quantum form, which means very much multidimensional and alive form in continuous movement, in continuous evolution. It is the very, very base of everything that is manifested. And basically, it can be viewed as information. I associate very much the quantum field of information that the quantum physics is talking about, trying to understand and explain, to this Akashic field of information, where light takes different forms, different shapes, and carries basically information into different manifested forms. Now, this is very much related to sacred geometry and vibration in terms of the fact that based on the information that light carries, it can form different patterns, and these patterns are what we call sacred geometry patterns, because they tend to form in a very natural, very geometric, very regular way. And all manifested life, it is basically based on how these patterns arrange and move. Now, the other part of the encoding from that light carries is the frequency, the sound. And this frequency is basically what sets the patterns in motion, what gives them life, so to say. So as the patterns start vibrating on a specific frequency, they will manifest in a specific way, in a specific dimension. If you were to change the frequency based on the same pattern, you will have a different form of manifestation. Now, all this is very much based on our perception. And this is significant in many ways. One way is that because of the nature of these patterns and codes, which, as I said, is very multidimensional, they do in reality exist in no time or in a time-space continuum, which is this Akashic quantum field, in basically in all possible shapes, forms, frequencies, because all these coexist at the same time. So what creates a fixed paradigm, pretty much as a snapshot into this pool of existence, is our perception. In the same way where in quantum physics, if they had this experiment where the particles of light manifest in different ways based on whether they are or aren't observed by somebody. It is exactly the same thing that occurs at all levels. This is a very simple way to explain how light works and manifests into existence. So now, because these light codes, this information is, as I said, dynamic, is alive, and is working through this quantum field. As we come in contact with it, as we observe it, we are interacting with it, and by interacting with it through our consciousness, through our presence, we are effectively merging to some extent with it, and this is causing a shift on both sides. It's causing a shift in our energy field. Therefore, those light codes get integrated into our energy field and create a level of attunement, whether they are perceived as drawings, as written form, as spoken, sung. Some people are just using their gestures or dance to express it. It doesn't really matter as much how they are expressed. What matters is the energy and the information that they carry. Now, as I said, this goes both ways. So at the same time as our energy field is being altered by this interaction with the light in its quantum form, at the same time that specific light code or pattern is being altered by our presence. It's being shifted in a way that it becomes compatible and very much in resonance with our energy field, with our soul signature. Therefore, the attunements that are being created through this life, through this alive light, if I can say it so, are very, very much in accordance with our own soul signature, with our own energy field. Yes. So different people will interact with the same code, with the same transmission, and they will get slightly different effects based on their own energy. Different people will look at the same drawing or the same code and may or may not resonate with it. They may, have an instant reaction to it or a very subtle reaction. And this is why these light codes, even the general ones, can be very personal. They basically connect at a very, very, very deep level. They basically connect at the same quantum level, at the level of our blueprint, of our DNA encoding, because DNA obviously it's again encoded information. So there's a very good level of resonance in there. So the shifts that are created are very profound, very deep, and very powerful, I would say, just because they are coming from such a deep level. Now, in terms of speaking light language or drawing it, it is very much the same process as any channeling. One key element of being able to do it is to be present, is to be in a state of complete presence, is to be able to disconnect your mind, so your ego mind, let's call it like this, so then this ego mind doesn't really interfere with the transmission. And it is very important to allow for this transmission to happen, whether it's, as I said, written, sung, drawn, spoken, it doesn't matter. Allowance is key. Now, one thing to realize is that for light language, for these light codes to be around you and to be accessible to you, you don't really have to do anything. Everything literally around us, including us, is light, is a manifestation of light in a specific form. So literally there is no way that we don't interact with light. The only thing that we need to do it is to acknowledge the presence of this light around us and of its various manifestations and specific patterns and shapes. Now, because these light codes are alive, the best way to interact with them is as you want to interact to something that is alive. Yes. So instead of trying to achieve a task or a result, which is, let's say, oh, I'm going to draw this code, this is my homework for today, and something will happen out of it. Instead of this, try to set an intention to connect with that specific energy that you want to channel, and that specific energy will then flow through you as you allow it in the way that is the most comfortable or appropriate for you at that time. This is why it's important to allow for complete freedom with these codes, with these transmissions. The other thing is, as with any channeling or accessing of intuitive information or of any type, is to trust that what you are getting is the right thing. Now, as I said, because these codes and patterns are coming through the interaction with your own energy field, with your higher self, the way they are coming can be very personal to you. So different people will access the same energy and they will get possibly different codes. Now, I know that there are people who get into what is called asemic writing, or getting to speak a light language as you would speak a foreign language, like French, for example. And this can become a bit scientific, which is great. Now, personally, I'm much more interested in the energy behind the language, behind the transmission. I'm less interested in identifying, repetitive words, as it were, or things like that, and identifying a specific language connected to, let's say, a specific race or something, alien being, something like that. Now, saying that, it is true that if I were to channel different beings or different energies, the language will come differently, with different tones, with different words, if I were to say so, if we can call them so. And yes, if you were to pay attention to it, you can identify repetitive words as such. But as I said, personally, I prefer very much to completely disconnect my mind and to just trust that whatever comes through is what needs to come through, is the right energy that is creating the right achievement. So, and it is always working in this way. Okay, so if anyone has any questions about this, please feel free to write it in comments. Okay, what I feel guided to do now is very shortly do a light language transmission. And this will effectively be very short. And its purpose is, well, first for you to see how light language works, for those who don't, although I'm assuming many of you already do, if you're not doing it yourself already. And also it is to connect you further through this transmission into the Akashic field so that you can get your own insights. Can you repeat what you said about the manifestation of light, Highness? Okay, I'll try to remember which part you're referring to, but basically what I said, or what I would say at this time about manifestation of light is, okay, maybe I should try to formulate it in a different way and bring a bit more the sacred geometry into the subject. But I'll just do this short light language transmission, and then I'll do this explanation as part of moving into more a bit into the sacred geometry part. Okay, so let's start with the light language. And as you listen to this transmission, have an intention to connect into the Akashic field to get your own insights about anything that is useful for you at this time, whether it's related to our subjects or something personal to you. Focus on the energy that you are receiving. Focus in your heart and allow your heart to connect with the energy coming through this transmission. Kiarahana, riaraka, katatarahanya hena, hu aya aka, ierahaya, hiu hataraha, ka aka ka. Sierra hai hera hakia hana mia hana hakia hetaraha Siara haya hakaraha ieka sana Suara hara haya hana kuha akasa hantka tsa haya Vasaria ha ama iki okokora kasa vu efera hamaraha Emerahatarakata ianaraha usaraha esaraha iaku otorohosa samarahaya mukaya akara aya He Inki Asaraha. And we allow for this to be grounded and anchored into our energy field. Kia Oka Aku Umaraha Ndora Kataraka San Sumaraha Kasa Efasanana Ata. Okay, so moving on with the question about the manifestation through light and sacred geometry. Now, as I said, sacred geometry, the patterns that we call sacred geometry are a manifestation of the information arranged in different shapes, so to say, which are the very base of the manifested matter. Now, if we are to look at the most known and utilized patterns in the sacred geometry, the first one is the flower of life. Now, the flower of life, it is basically, as far as I understand and see, the base lattice, if I can say so, of all manifested matter. Now, if you imagine the pattern of the flower of life in a, let's say, 3D form, but then going into a multidimensional form and shape, this is creating like a matrix, like a very base matrix into the universe for the light, for the energy to be manifested. Now, obviously, because this is a very multidimensional complex process, it's however you were to explain it, it only touches one part. But to simplify it a little bit, imagine that in various nodes of this flower of life matrix, there would be different sacred geometry shapes or patterns. And let's take, for example, the Platonic solids, which are again very known. And further than this, we are going to look a bit at the Merkaba, which is part of the questions also that someone addressed previously. So each of these patterns, each of these solids are creating further a base system for energy to manifest into existence. Now, if we are to look at human beings, we say that Merkaba is our energy vehicle, so to say. So basically, the way I understand it is, and through the guidance that I have received, the Merkaba is basically the core system based on which we function and we exist as humans. Now, we have this chakra system that, and I'm going to simply refer to the 7 chakras that are the most known and apparent. And we tend to see them in a kind of in a row, in a column, in a very linear arrangement. But if you are to switch to a more dynamic, multidimensional view, these energy centers could um, be worked out in a way that they correspond with the corners of the Merkaba, with the two pyramids that are intersected, having the heart in the center of it. So the heart center would be, let's say, part of the both pyramids. Now these pyramids, they spin in different directions, and through this spin, they keep things alive. Now the heart is very important in terms of creating the frequency, creating that sound that I was talking about that is needed for these patterns, for these light codes to be kept alive, so to say. Yes. So now I wanted to make this analogy with a human body to have a bit more of a palpable sense of this sacred geometry in its applicability, rather than just keeping it in a very abstract field. Because, as I said, the same as with the light codes, the sacred geometry patterns, in the same way, they are very, very much alive. They are not just some fixed objects that carry information or, help the light to be manifest, but themselves, as sacred geometry patterns and shapes, they are very much alive. Now, if you are going back to that image of having this lattice of the universe with the flower of life, and in different nodes you would get different shapes and patterns. If you get the Merkaba for humans corresponding to the chakras that we have, the energy centers, which further correspond to different systems that we function based on. In other cases, you may get a different shape, which corresponds to different energy centers, which corresponds with different functions. And then, for example, you get maybe some alien races that will function based on different other systems and patterns. Now, I'm referring to the Merkaba as a very general thing for all the human beings. Obviously, now the information then gets coded and detailed further, and then you get specific, much more specific manifestations in different shape or forms. But coming back to the Merkaba as a manifested pattern in one of the nodes, so to say, of the flower of life, because, as I said, these patterns are very much alive. In reality, the Merkaba is just a snapshot of an alive, continuously alive manifestation of light in different patterns. Otherwise said, we perceive it as a Merkaba based on our frequency, on our senses, on our perception. So we are now getting actually to a point, and that's, I think, something that I want to address, where because we are tapping much more into our higher dimensional aspects, into our multidimensional aspects, we are now becoming more and more able to perceive more than we have until now. Otherwise said, our senses are expanding, and we are able to perceive different levels, even of these sacred geometry aspects and of the light forms and codes. Um, so to explain this a bit further, let's say based on our of functioning based on this Merkaba pattern, we have we are utilizing different systems in our that translate in our 3D reality as different functions on the physical level, of the emotional level, intellectual, mental level, and obviously all of them are interrelated. But nonetheless, we do perceive the Merkaba as something very fixed in its perfection, like a fixed shape, regardless of the fact that it's moving, it may expand and so forth, based on how we interact with it and how present and aware we are of it. But because, as I said, we are now opening new senses, we are opening our perception further, we are expanding basically our consciousness and our perception, we are now becoming able to perceive different other aspects that are coming in relation to this Merkaba, and realize that there's more to it that we can have access to. Now, this is part of what we call our ascension, or our integration of our consciousness, or our expanded consciousness. So, for example, if based on the actual system, we have functions such as the circulatory system, the nervous system, which carries electricity, and so forth. If you're to access different aspects from higher frequencies, corresponding to higher frequencies of these patterns, you would be able to, which we will be, I believe, in the not so far future, other systems that correspond to other energy centers that we don't yet perceive, or we are not present with necessarily. And this is how you get to have access to skills such as teleportation, telepathy, time traveling, and so forth. I truly believe these correspond to different energy systems and chakras, so to call them, which are part of the same system, same arrangement. It's just that we are not present with them at this moment because of our limited perception. Now, moving forward with the sacred geometry through this lattice of the universal pattern of the flower of life, let's say we have the Merkaba in one node, we might have something else, a different shape in a different node, and so forth. And as I said, they correspond, they create different systems, they create different ways and frames for life to be manifested. All these different systems are connected, of course, through these lattice, through this lattice that is the universal fabric of the flower of life. And they do communicate with each other through different impulses, which I believe are direct connection with the heart. I believe that each of these systems, each of those different races, or alien types, or you name it, however the matter chooses to manifest, Each of these systems have a core center which can be assimilated to what is our heart center, our energy center. And this is basically the center that is creating that pulse, that is creating that frequency that is then connecting and interacting to the other systems. This is why it is advisable and the easiest, I would say, to connect into other dimensions, into other frequencies through our heart by sending out the signal, the pulse of our heart. This is then creating a wave that is sending a signal, that is sending an information which can further interact with what is around. I hope this is not too abstract for everybody. I know it can be a bit you know, it might sound a bit complicated, but just allow for it to sink in, and I'm sure that you will get an understanding of the information that I'm trying to relay. Another thing that is important related to the heart and related to the sacred geometry and light and information and frequencies is, thank you, thank you, Ness, is the pose, is the unmanifested state. Now, if we are to focus on our heart, and obviously this is a very commonly known thing, our physical heart has a cycle of pumping the blood. It has the systole, the diastole, which is a break, basically, it's a pause. So that pause is basically what keeps us connected constantly into the unmanifested state of the light, of the existence. If you are to look at the source level, the source is, as I say, everything and nothing. So basically it does refer very much to this unmanifested state of things that is at the same time the potential of all manifestation. Now this is where all the information comes out of, and this is where everything becomes manifested. Now, if you think of the universe and see these patterns within the flower of life in a continuous pulse, it is very similar to a heartbeat, to a heart. Yes, everything gets expanded out of nothing and then contracted and then expanded and contracted. Everything lives out of nothing, as it were. And this is why at every moment, at every single moment in time, energy has the potential to be manifested as anything. As I said, it is up to us how we observe it, how we interact with it, because it will manifest based on our observation. Now, if we observe the Merkaba that we are functioning on, as the Merkaba, as a fixed platonic solid in its perfection, may it be dynamic, may it be multidimensional, alive, etc. But every time, with every pulse of our heart, with every beat, our whole existence is being recreated. Obviously, this is happening in a way that we are not consciously aware of. But because of our mind patterns, every time that our existence is being recreated, because we don't really perceive those moments of non-manifestation, the patterns in our mind, the constructs in our mind, based on our learnings, our experience, our beliefs, will say with every bit, with every expansion of the matter, that the Merkaba looks like the Merkaba, and that's all there is to it. And our bodies look like they are, our functioning systems look like they are. So basically, we keep recreating the same frame, the same existence, the same state of manifestation. Now, if we were to become present with that 0 point, with that level of unmanifestation, and as the matter, the patterns pulse back into manifestation, we were to observe it as something else, then we will create a different reality. And that's what we are constantly doing, because from time to time we are observing things as different to what they were before. And this is creating that shift. The matter, the light becomes consciously aware of a different potential, and then its existence will become created based on that information that we imprint into it. And as the unmanifested becomes aware of itself, what happens is it basically becomes magnetic. Bottom line, it is very much in our power and in our nature also to manifest as observers and as creators through our intention, through our manifestation power, which is simply a result of the expression of our own energy, of our own light, of our own codes. It is very scientific if you look at it like this. It may seem very esoterical, it may seem very out there, but in reality, if you look at the core way of functioning, you realize it is very simple. It makes a lot of sense. Of course, this is easier said than done, because we've been so caught, and we still are to some extent, in specific constructs, mental constructs, which, as I said, keep reinforcing the same patterns into our reality. But by simply becoming aware of how things function, by simply becoming aware of the fact that the unmanifested aspects are very much part of our life, we are becoming able to recognize the creative power that our simple existence is embedded with. So I'm going to end it for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you still have further questions, please feel free to share it in the comments. Also, I really appreciate any feedback from those who have been participating live. Thank you for your presence and very much. Also, I appreciate any feedback for those who are going to watch this at a later date. And based on this, I will decide whether it's useful to do more videos like this on different other subjects, or even developing on these subjects if you're interested. So yes, please let me know. I am really going to play along with what people want and how interested they are in all this. I will probably upload this on my YouTube channel, which is tiny for the moment, but hopefully will grow. So then if you wish to share it, it will be easier. And yes, again, thank you very much. Thank you all for being here. Take care of yourself, keep your vibration high, and be present with yourself. This is the best advice that I can give you. Be present with yourself. Thank you very much. Have a nice evening. Bye.